My name is indeed Lara Warmelink, and unlike the previous speakers, I'm not going to be talking about the concealed information test. So if you're here for lots of information about the concealed information test, take a nap quickly or something like that. I'm just going to start by telling you what the IAT is, because I thought maybe some people in the audience wouldn't have worked with it before, wouldn't have known about it, and then I'll talk about the study I did. So the IAT, it stands for Implicit Association Test. I'm going to be calling it the IAT, because otherwise I'm never going to finish on time. It was originally developed as a measure of sort of unconscious biases. So it's been used a lot for, like, how do you feel about black people or women in science or stuff like that. And it basically consists of a series, of a blocked series of categorization trials, in which the participant sees a stimulus and then has to categorize that stimulus by pressing either one or the other button. And in the test, there were two crucial blocks. And the first of these sort of looks like this. So the stimulus to classify is, Stimulus to classify is in the middle. And that stimulus is part of either one category or the other. So in my example, which I completely made up, the stimulus is either a valence stimulus, which people have to classify as being either good or bad, or it's a color stimulus, which they have to classify as green or yellow. And the trick is that the participant only has two response buttons. So good stimuli have the exact same response as green stimuli, and bad stimuli have the exact same response as yellow stimuli. So then what happens in the second crucial block is that one of the categories changes places. So now good and yellow stimuli share a response button, and bad and green stimuli share a response button. And then the difference in reaction time, and by the way also in errors, between the two blocks is indicative of the strength of the association between concepts. So if you're quicker, if good stimuli go together with yellow stimuli compared to when good stimuli go together with green stimuli, that is a sign that you associate yellow stimuli more with good things. And then you could argue that that person probably sees green things as being better than yellow things. And Sartori and Ali in 2008 in a series of experiments said that you could use this to detect deception. So what they did is they had, one of the categories were sentences that were definitely true or false. So they used things like, I'm doing a psychology experiment, or I'm at the beach. So that's things that they were definitely true or false. And then the other set of stimuli the participants classified were about the thing that Sartori and Ali were interested in, so about the thing people might be lying about. So this is the data from one of their mock crime experiments. So here we get innocent suspects who didn't steal the CD-ROM, and then they're faster when true sentences go with I didn't steal the CD-ROM than when true sentences go with I did steal the CD-ROM. And then the guilty suspects who did steal the CD-ROM are faster when true sentences go with I stole the CD-ROM compared to when true sentences go with I didn't steal the CD-ROM. So it's, for them, it worked quite nicely. Well, Bruno Verschuren, who is here, did a lovely study in which he told people about it. Now use a countermeasure, and then people can basically countermeasure that perfectly. I didn't have time to get it in my talk, but I think he did get it in psych science, so I'm sure that he's still quite pleased with that study. But in 2011, Acosta and Ali, who are, I believe, the same lab as Sartori and Ali, they did this similar IAT about intentions. So they didn't have a deception element to it. They just said, so if we put true sentences together with, so they used two types of intentions, sleep intentions and job intentions. So if true sentences go with, I plan to sleep at home at night, then participants are quicker than when the true sentences went with, I plan to quickly fly to Moscow and sleep in Moscow tonight. And they did the same thing with the job intention. So I want to be a psychologist when I'm graduated. You can see here that the effect was much larger for in the sleeping group than in the job group. So apparently the students were much more certain about the fact that they wanted to sleep in their own bed tonight and that they wanted to be a psychologist when they graduated. But so basically, if Sartori and Ali say that you can use IATs to detect deception, and Acosta and Ali say that you can use IATs to detect intentions, I felt, well, you should be able to use IATs to detect deception about intentions, which is what I do. I just like that. So I'm going to present two studies here, and there are about two types of intentions. So the first are what I call self-induced intentions. So those are intentions that people just had, so they came to the lab having that intention. To be fair, these are students, they tend to have really boring intentions. So the most common intention is, I'm going to go home. And then the second most common intention is, I'm going to go to class. And that takes up like 80% of the sample. And then the second group of people are talking about what I call lab-induced intentions. So these people are talking about an intention I gave them. So I said to them, you have to go do this, this, and this. And if you think, that's quite a familiar distinction that you're making here, that's because I spoke about this at Sarmac as well. So if you saw my talk at Sarmac, you think, this looks familiar? Yes, this is the other half of my talk at Sarmac. So I ran quite a big study with 2 measures in it. The other measure was at Sarmac, and the second measure was here. So for the self-induced participants, there were 40 of them. There's not much to say about them except that they were students. And that 7 of them didn't tell me which gender they were. I don't know why, but I have them on video. I could technically go back and check, but I haven't. For the lab-induced study, there were 42 participants. And again, they are mostly female and quite young, and they're students. So what I did in the self-induced study is I contacted the participants beforehand via email. And I said, I want you to come to the lab, and you're going to be interviewed about your intentions. So you're going to be interviewed about what you're going to do after the study. So first of all, I told them, if you don't want to talk about what you're going to do after the study, tell me and don't come in. Because I don't want somebody to come in and maybe wasting time and then go, I don't want to tell you what I'm going to do. Secondly, if they were lying, I also told them that. So I told them, I'm going to ask you to lie. So please prepare a lie. Think about what you're going to say. And then I also asked them to describe both the intention they actually had and, if they were lying, their prepared lie in 5 short sentences, because then I could use those as similar to the IAT and I didn't have to make them myself. So they came in, did all the ethical paperwork, did an interview in which their job was to convince the interviewer they were telling the truth, and then they did the IAT. In the lab-induced study, the participants just came in, and I gave them their intentions. So what happens, first of all, for the truth tellers, I gave them what I call here intention A. And it was something very simple, to go to a store on campus, buy a couple of things, and then bring them back to me. And then I told the truth tellers in the interview and in the IAT, simply tell the truth. Then for the liars, I gave them a different intention. Intention B, it was that they had to drop a USB stick off in an office without being noticed. But in the interview and in the IAT, they had to lie and pretend that they had the same intention as the truth tellers had. So they had to say that they were going to the store and buy things. So what happened for the interviewer is that all participants should claim that they were going to the store, when in fact only half of the participants were actually going to go to the store. So this is what the IAT blocks look like. First, all participants did a simple block categorizing sentences as true, false. So I took the ones from story. They're very simple. I'm doing a psychology experiment. I'm behind the computer. I'm playing football, that sort of stuff. It's just to get them used to the task. Then they did a block in which they were doing the intention sentences. So for the self-induced participants, those are the sentences they sent in to me about their intentions. And again, this is to get them used to the task. Then there's a block in which they have to do both of the sentences at the same time, which is what I'm interested in. And then the doing, not doing sentences reverse places. So if they used to be left, they're going to be right, and the other way around. And then they do both of them again. And the order of these was counterbalanced. So some people had doing on the left first, some people are doing on the right first. So what it looks like for truth tellers is that they have on the sentences to classify, and then they have truth and doing on the left, and then false and not doing on the right, or the other way around. Of course, for doing and doing not doing can be reversed. And then for liars, it looks the exact same, but you have to remember that they are lying to the doing not doing sentences. So the sentences that they have to classify as I'm doing this are the sentences that are about the lie they prepared, and the sentences that they have to say I'm not doing this, those are the sentences that are about their real intention, about what they're actually going to do. So I still find this confusing. So it's just a quick recap. So in what I call the congruent condition, truth tellers have truth and intention together and false and distractor sentences. For the self-induced condition, I took the distractor sentences from other people's intentions. So that made sure that they were reasonably plausible. And then in the incongruent condition for truth, that's true and distractor go together and false and intentions go together. For the liars, in what I still go the congruent condition, even though to them it's probably not very congruent, the truth goes together with the lie, and their false goes together with their real intention. And then in the incongruent condition, true goes together with their real intention, and false goes together with their lies. Yes, are you still with me? Thank you. So then what I did, I just ditched all the data from the single blocks, because I don't care about that. I took the data from the blocks in which I do both classifications at the same time. Then I put those into R, and I put those into R in long format. So each trial is its own line. Rather than averaging over participants, each trial becomes its own little observation. And then I did some linear mixed effect modeling. So I started by throwing out all the error trials. So if the participant answered wrongly, they go. If the participant answers more than 2 standard deviations slower or faster than the mean, they also go, but no participant was ever 2 standard deviations faster than the mean, because the 2 standard deviations faster than the mean was below 0. And then I started the modeling by building what I would call a full model. So in my full model, I assume that everything I want to be there is there, and that everything I measured affects the outcome. So the outcome is purely the reaction time. And then first of all, I assume that the veracity, so whether or not they're lying or telling the truth, interacts with the congruent and incongruent block to produce their response time. And then in the full model, I'll assume that they are effects of the counterbalance, the trial number which they're on, their age, their gender, and whether, no, those are it. So that's my full model. And then what I do is one by one, I take these factors out, and I see whether that makes the factor worse. And I judge whether it's worse by the AIC, the BIC, and I use an ANOVA function in R. So if I take such a factor out, and the model becomes worse, I say, okay, so that factor obviously matters, I'm keeping that. If I take it out and it doesn't make the model worse, or it makes the model better, I'm like, okay, this factor can go. So what I'm doing here is I'm just presenting the best models. So you're going to have to trust me that I tried all possible combinations. I did. So for the self-induced participants, the best model you get is this. So linear mixed effects modeling distinguish between fixed factors, stuff that I control, and random factors, stuff that I don't control. So the fixed factors it finds is that there's a significant effect between veracity and congruency, which is what I'd expect, and I'll talk to you about it later. Secondly, there is a main effect of congruency. So both liars and truth tellers are faster in the congruent condition. Then there's an effect of trial. So participants tend to go faster as the blocks go on. So almost all participants show a sort of slow response on the first trial of a block. And then the random factors that matter are participants and sentences. So some participants are faster than others, and some stimuli can be responded faster to than others, and the model controls for that. So if we look at the interaction effect that I'm interested in, these are very simple box plots. So you can see by the fact there's all sorts of dots over there and no dots at the bottom that the data is skewed, and I haven't corrected for that. And then you see that in the congruent condition, truth tellers are faster than liars, which is what we'd expect, because for truth tellers, true sentences go together with their real intention, and for liars, it only goes together with an intention they made up. And then in the incongruent conditions, liars are faster than truth tellers, which is what we would expect, because in that condition, for liars, the truth goes together with their real intention, and for truth tellers, the true sentences go together with some distractor sentences which they never heard of. So that was good. Then I did the same thing for the lab-induced thing. So you get the same thing. There's a veracity by congruency interaction effect, which I'll show you again. Again, there's a main effect of congruency. There's again an effect of trial, so they're quicker as the study continues. And here there was also an effect of age. So here I found that younger participants were in general faster than older participants. And still participants and sentence matter. By the way, these two factors are by far the most predictive. So who you are is very, very predictive of how fast you can respond to the different trials. And then the interaction effect looks slightly different. So we still find that liars are faster than truth tellers in the incongruent condition, but now we also find that liars are teensy-wincy, not significantly, by the way, but a teensy-wincy bit faster with the congruent condition. And that sort of made me wonder, because I was thinking, is it the case here that liars are a little bit faster than in the self-induced condition, or is it the case that truth tellers are a little bit slower? Because it might be that because I gave them an intention, the truth tellers didn't quite believe me, that they were sort of like, meh, she told me that I'm going to do this, but I don't think I am, so that they're not really associating the real intention with with true sentences. So what I did is I asked all the participants during the study, in the lab-induced study, to rate on a 1 to 7 point scale whether or not they were planning to execute the intention I told them they were going to have to execute. So then I reused the same model, but instead of using a veracity by congruency interaction effect, I replaced it with a veracity by congruency by intention effect. So that intent is simply on a scale of 1 to 7, how much did you intend to do the study, which was significant. And it looks, I hate three-way interaction effect, so I'll try to take it too slowly. First of all participants said at least 5, 6, or 7 in that they intended it. So none of them said, I don't intend to do this at all. I suspect they're lying to me about this. I suspect that really some of them are like, I'm not going to do this, but hey-ho. But then what you see is that in the incongruent conditions, so this is where we expect liars to be faster, the more they say that they intended to complete it, the bigger the difference between liars and truth tellers. So the more they say they're going to do it, the faster liars are. And then if you look in the congruent condition, for the 5s and the 6s, the truth tellers are a bit quicker than the liars, which is what we would have expected. But then for congruent 7, the liars are a lot faster than the truth tellers. So I think that that's purely an effect caused by the liars who rate themselves a 7, so I really, really intend to do that, just being really, really fast. I think they're just more motivated, and they're just sitting there pressing the buttons like crazy. So a conclusion. So the IAT does distinguish between truth tellers and liars, although not anywhere near as good as Satori and Ali found it. My effects are much smaller than his. And also we find that intentions can be detected the way Acosta and Ali said they could be. But our liars also show the same effect. So both truth tellers and liars are faster in a congruent condition. So that when Acosta and Ali say we detect intentions, I'm like, well, yeah, but you also pick up the false ones. So that's a bit of a problem. And the main conclusion is I think my liars are pretty good. You know, especially in the congruent condition, they get pretty damn close to what the truth tellers do. And it's only really in the incongruent condition where they're being too fast that the main differences appear. So I think this is purely a strategy for them. So the liars, they've done the interview, they're doing the IAT, it tells them that they have to be as fast and accurate as possible so they can pick up relatively easy in the fact that they need to be quick. And they just sit there and they're quick. And then sometimes they're too quick, but, you know, pretty good attempt. Thank you very much for listening. Do you have any questions?